My name is Mary Grygleski. Just a quick introduction. I work for IBM as a developer advocate in Java related technology. And then today, my talk is on enterprise hybrid mobile app, and essentially too with a cloud native backend. Essentially, I just have very simple, like a very simple use case that I was going to show, and that backend has been deployed onto an IBM Cloud platform. So here, part of me, I'm not here to try to sell, and I think folks are probably kind of like, you know, when I come to kind of say that, okay, I'm here trying to talk about my technology, you know, my company's technology, and that's not my intention too. I feel that today we have like just so many things out in the marketplace, so many choices, so many things, and they all should be like working together. But of course, there's this business, like commercial kind of boundaries that guarding us or guiding us. And so the point I'm trying to make is that I'm actually into like community work too. I'm also the Chicago Java Users Group, one of the organizers, and very actively engaging myself in the community too. So I understand like we're all developers, and I myself also was a developer for 20 some years now. So also started off doing like C, Unix, and then eventually getting into Java, and now into more of the, actually more, my space is more reactive Java at this point, but today the talk is enterprise hybrid mobile app, because before joining IBM, about 4 months ago, I was with a company called US Cellular in Chicago, and it's a cell phone service provider, and I was there in the IT department, and then as such too, I'm sure you all are aware, being a developer these days, you are not just like one thing, you're multifaceted, you're a polyglot, and that's what it is. And so for me, coming in here, not as like an expert mobile app developer, but is really sharing of some information based on the experience that I have had. So, okay, so with that, I'll just start now. Because I was also given like 30 minutes, normally I do this talk, it's about 45 minutes, and it's actually a while ago. I did this earlier at DevNexus in Atlanta, too, with my CJUG, my Chicago JUG president. And so now I'm doing it again, and because I think it's relevant for this conference, too. And I'm specifically just pointing out the use case using Android. So, okay, so this talk, actually, when I did it, I also call it what to do when your boss needs a native mobile app in less than 24 hours. And of course, too, I'm not, you know, kind of saying that it's joking, but it's just trying to bring out the aspect of how can you actually, let's say, you know, you are in a department, like nobody knows mobile, but then your boss would come and say, well, I need your app, normally, like a normal web app, to be up in 24 hours, so real fast, what would you do? And so I was just trying to kind of point out that this is like one way of doing it, is use a hybrid mobile app framework. But maybe I should ask you, how many of you already are actually mobile app developers in here? Oh, okay, so quite a few of you. And how many of you have used like a hybrid approach too? Okay, so also quite a few of you, so that's cool. So maybe you also know something, well, you can probably know more than I do, because as such, I have had a bit of experience, and based on, again, on my experience at US Cellular, so. Okay, so let me also just, with this experience, I just want to point out to some of the challenges in an enterprise IT computing environment. This is like the ecosystem that I was dealing with, and as such too, I just want to give you some ideas. So over here, like they have some legacy apps, and on the back end, I start with the back end on the right-hand side, and that's like vendor would be helping out with some J2, at the time was J2E, but then it turns to JEE, Java Enterprise Edition app. But they were still kind of old, using like enterprise Java beans like EJB, and using the old stuff, very old proprietary, developed by a vendor. So over there, it serves customer with like order service and subscriber information, you know, in a cell phone company, like the subscriber information, essentially. So all those services then are basically being used, or actually being called through a service bus, and it's ESB. And without going into details, those are older, like using SOAP protocol. And so over here too, then on the front end side too, then there's a Node.js layer. Also then we're trying to also like combine like newer technologies. So then also another vendor came in and then was just doing this layer in Node.js using Seneca microservices. And then from there, then that's when we have like Angular, one app, and then interacting with this. And it's a complex like e-commerce application in which the web application allow you to, initially it was just a web app, subscriber log on and being able to check their information and then also like order, like just like your mobile app too, you can actually order your phones and service and pay your bills and that type of stuff. So there's also that e-commerce component side, which is then using like an Oracle ATG e-commerce platform. It's kind of older thing. It's using like Java 6 kind of, or Java 7 at the time. So anyway, so at first too, the company had just like web, like have the user log on like onto your desktop log on to your subscriber account and then do things. But eventually too, then the subscriber were doing that on their mobile phone, but running the app as a web app on your browser on your phone. So obviously it's not ideal. So then companies said, okay, well, let's put it onto the mobile app. So that's the time when we were kind of told, and I joined in the middle of that project. And so it was already decided, let's use the hybrid app, mobile app approach. So so over here too is basically the My Account, and then you dial in and then get to your app that way. So, okay. So that was the challenge too. Like at the time was that, you know, I just spoke a little ahead of myself, but at the time too, like the managers or management were saying that, well, what can we do? They look around, there were nobody that already knew mobile development. So what can we do? So then eventually they boil down to let's use the hybrid mobile approach. The reason is that then this way there's no need for you to know very deep about Android and then also like iOS. And those were the two platforms that the company decided to work with. So sorry. Okay. Oops. Sorry. I have something pop up. Okay. Okay. So then how can like so the framework we decided to use would be Apache Cordova. And so let's just take a quick look. So yeah, so Apache Cordova here, you can tell it is just a regular web app. And basically, it works through this HTML rendering on their engine. It's called WebView. And from there, then WebView will then talk to your underlying operating system, which is in our case, was like Android or iOS. So underneath the OS then will talk to your devices. But then you'll be wondering, like, then what to do now? Like, there are phones and devices that have specific needs, and they actually have their calendars, have their contacts, have their accelerometer, and the maps, and all those things. So what Cordova has is very nice too. Is that they have Cordova plugins, and the plugins they have some core standard plugins, but you can also like define your own plugins too. You can have user plugins. And one of the plugins that we've used, I thought was more interesting maybe to you, is less boring, would be the push. There's like a hot code push plugin too. So essentially that one, they allow the app to be updated silently behind the scenes, so without the user knows about it. So that would be kind of a pretty useful plugin to have. Okay, so I'll just also talk a little too about what's the difference between like hybrid and versus native. So as I just mentioned too, on a hybrid model is that you have your web, you have your wrapper framework, and then in the runtime it actually talks to the web view, and then web view would then like translate all your JavaScript that actually is in there, and then it talks to the mobile underneath, your Android or iOS underneath. So, but if you look into this to native, it's essentially just native, your framework will talk directly to your mobile OS. So as you can see then, there's definitely the performance side of things because you add another layer to have to translate your JavaScript in the runtime and to talk to your underlying OS. So now I'll go just give you an idea too. This is a list of all of the Cordova plugins, and a little small for me. Okay, so we have on all the platforms too, it has Cordova, the command line, and then there's embedded web views too, and also some of the plugin interfaces. And then there's some of the core plugins too, as you can see, then it's over here. You can see okay, right? Yeah, because I can't actually see too well, it's too small on my screen here. So, for example, like camera, that would be like plugin too, like it's very common and needed too in any kind of web mobile app. So, okay, so like here too, like I basically just took it from the Cordova documentation too. So the plugin is really a bit of an add-on code that provides JavaScript interface to like native components. So as I mentioned too about I'd like to just bring up about the hot code push too. So or how many of you have done like mobile app and then also implement some form of like hot code push kind of functionality? Yeah. Okay, maybe you haven't. So I'll then just like speak a little because as such, the hot code push too, it was very useful because then we were kind of then thinking of well, what to do. Once we release the app, then the app will be on your devices. But then there will be also changes such as like the JavaScript changes or even just images or any kind of resource files that needs to be updated. And those we don't want to interrupt and tell the user every single time they log on, oh, you have a new update, and then please go and download a new version, or maybe have some phones set up to kind of get you to update it like that. So what we have is we did implement this hot code push plugin. So what it does is that when you log on to the hot code push or log on to the my account application, then underneath too, then it will then communicate. Underneath the plugin then will know and then would go and check some of the settings that are on the server. The server will then recognize on my phone, for example, I have build 51A. And then actually on the server side, I might have 53B, that's the latest. So then like the plugin then is smart enough to know, okay, now you actually do need 53B in there. So and then in that case, then it will just silently do all the files update behind the scenes without the users even knowing about it. So that was a very kind of useful plugin for us to have, and also then eliminate trouble to have our user to have to upgrade their apps every single time when we have updates. However, the one thing is that, let's say if we really change the structure of our code underneath, then we will need to release a new major version that would then require a user to then download a new version. So that would be the only time. But other than that, most of the time, to like within half a year or so, we didn't have those kind of changes. Then we basically do this behind the scenes like hot code push, and that worked out very nicely. But one thing to note is that when we were testing it, it was a little confusing because the QA folks were like, okay, well, we can't tell, like, how do we actually test it, right? Because every time you turn on your phone, when they're testing, then initially too, they were like, oh, they're getting updates, and then they have to understand, like, to know what features has been in 52B, and then how can we find out and that type of stuff. So we kind of implemented just like internally, we also have some like, just for testing purpose in the debug version, like not for the release version, we actually kept track of some internal version number that we can tell. And so that was a bit of a thing that we needed to do at that time to handle this testing this hot code push plugin. So yeah, so that was that. And okay, so here too, I also then wanted to talk a little bit about Cordova Events and also the supported platforms. As such too, I'll be showing you a little bit too about the code. There's this, okay, so Cordova is like all like events driven. So when basically there's an event called device ready, it's kind of the first and foremost like event that needs to happen. So let's say when you load up your application and then load up onto your phone, then basically too, the phone when Cordova is loaded, then it will then send a device ready event over to your phone. Because what happened is that at the same time, you have to know that with the Cordova app, you have your JavaScript runtime as well as your Android Java code too. So sometimes too, they may not all be ready at the same time. So then basically too, when your Cordova part is ready, then it will send this event. So when it's ready, then your mobile app can then go ahead and do whatever it needs to do. Because if, let's say, like things are not all loaded, and then your mobile app continue to do what it's supposed to do, it's not going to work. So you want to have some way to let your app knows that, okay, wait until this event happens and Cordova is loaded, then you can go ahead and do stuff. So, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you too, like all these list of events in here. Okay, so now I'll go into a bit of a demo. I'll just quickly show you that how it can be done quickly. So I'm going to have to switch off this. Okay. It's taking a bit of time. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Get bigger. I guess you can see okay, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So because of the time, actually my normal app presentation too would be actually going into demonstrating the app, but here I was just have a shorter time, so I will just quickly show you how to do some Cordova commands quickly. So these are pretty just basic commands. Okay, I'll just do this. So first of all, you do want to make sure that you have installed JDK, Java, and also obviously your Android Studio as well as Gradle, the build tool too, you need that. And also then if you want to run the Android debugger too, you can do stuff inside the studio too, but right now for what I have experienced is that I'm just doing things on the command line. So I'm just using Cordova command line plus also the ADB, which is Android debugger. So that one comes with the SDK and is underneath the platform tools. Yeah, so I just want to point that out first. So basically, you want to also obviously install Cordova, and that's handled through npm the package manager, Node.js package manager. So assuming all those, you should have Cordova. To run the command line, just basically call Cordova, and then if you just call Cordova, it will return you the help. And then let's say you already have a web app, then what would you do? So you can basically in a very simplistic sense, you can just run Cordova create, and let's say here, we call it DevFest FL. Yeah, so now, very quickly, then it already creates this DevFest folder. So think of it as more like a Cordova. This is like the container now. So underneath, you see that if you look into this, the config.xml would be the file that it generates for you right away, would be all of the definitions and configuration for your app. Over here, and then if you look to, by default, it already creates for you Android and also an iOS, different like sections for that, for customizing. But at this point too, you won't have anything at this point, meaning that there's no platform. So to run that, you can do a Cordova platform ls. It will then show you. You haven't actually installed your platform yet, but the available platforms would be, in this case, like Android or the browser or iOS or your Mac OS and also the Windows too. So in this case, I just wanted to do this quick demo, would be like doing a platform add Android. So, okay. Okay, so now then, if you do this again, do a platform ls, then it will show that Android has been deployed on here. So let's say, I'll just quickly show you too. Over here, there's a folder called www, and that's actually the folder where you will copy over your web app into. So in order to do this Cordova to make it like your normal web app, let's say, even without doing anything, I can just quickly show you this. You can just do a build. So right now, there's an empty app. The www folder has some things, but it's just a default empty app that comes with Cordova. So you can just do a Cordova build. And if you don't give it any platform, or even if you give some platform, right now it's Android, then it will go and do the build for you quickly. So. Okay, so this is built, and then now in order to run it, you can, of course, in a real-life scenario, you have much more things that you need to worry about, but I just highlight some of the steps that you can do. Let's say you kind of get all the weeds, kind of taken care of, you want to just run it, so this would be the command to run. You can then do a Cordova run, and again, right now I'm not connected to my device, so what it will do, it will actually bring up an emulator. So you can just say run, and I have Android, but even if you don't give it, let's say, then I only have one platform. available, then it knows that I already have Android in there. So, oh, okay, so it's actually already there. I already have my, you can see, right? So now of course too, like I'm already able to do this, but on your Android Studio, that's where you can define your devices to your virtual device. Yeah, so it gives you a list of all the virtual devices. You can kind of pick one. In this case, I think it's either a Pixel phone or something like that. So I did something with Nexus too, but for some reason it crashed, and then I basically eventually picked a Pixel phone. It seems to be working okay. So yeah, so okay, so here it just comes up with the default thing and doesn't really do much, but it at least comes up. But that gives you kind of an idea too, and of how this can be done. Now also just to give you the experience is that. The difficulty sometimes with Android I find is using emulator too, right here too. Let's see, you can also run the ADB debugger. Again, you can point it to the platform tools. So if you run ADB, then now it will show you, okay, your list of devices attached is your emulator. But when I plug in my phone too, then it will also show you. So then actually when you go run it too, you can also, like I think the Cordova, you can run it with the. If you do a help, it will show you too. You can run it with the emulator. Yeah, that's right. So there's you can deploy it explicitly to an emulator too. If you have both, if your phone and your devices, you want to go to the emulator, then you can give a flag called emulator. It will then go to your phone. If the Android is your only one, then it will go there. Otherwise, I think you have to tell it which one you want to go to. So that's that. Okay, so that's how you can do it. But I'll go back to the slides because it appears that I only have 5 more minutes. So sorry. Yeah. Okay. Like I said in my normal presentation before, I actually get my app up and then be able to show too. Okay. Let me go back. Okay, and I will run this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'll just quickly pass through the slides. Okay, so now let me kind of talk about what to watch out for. Again, this is kind of very simple presentation, and so I apologize if I didn't have time to go into all the details. But one thing I can tell you is that from the experience at the US Cellular, the performance was a huge issue because what happened was that the company, they wanted all the functionality from a normal subscriber app to be on the phone, and that's something I would highly suggest don't do that. But at the time too, like management was just a lot of pressure, so we did not have time to sort out what we should put on the mobile app and what should be dropped out. So we kind of basically take what is there on the web app and then just essentially run all the Cordova, all these preparation and plug it onto the app. Turns out that the app was running very, very slowly because again, the web view layer is translating all of the commands that goes between your JavaScript and then to your mobile app. So you have to be aware of the performance issue. So let's say if you probably don't want to run or use this hybrid mobile app approach if you are going to do some mission critical thing or something that requires you to have high performance. For example, your games, you never want to use a hybrid mobile app approach to do it. Then that you don't. But something, let's say like system of record, that people, maybe your company would need somebody to just log on and check their balance and without much of a back end going on, then maybe that will be a good choice. Something, that more static system of record type of data. So. And then also too, there's also native features too. That's another thing. Because again, it's a hybrid mobile app framework. So every time if your native app platform has any updates, like Android has some updates or iOS, then it will always take time for like Cordova to get caught up. And Cordova, the engineers will still need to go and take the Android update and build and do all those. So you have to be also aware too, it's not gonna get the latest, greatest thing when your native operating system has any updates. So, and then of course too, the look and feel issue. Now Cordova itself is a very kind of more like an engine kind of centric type of framework, meaning that it has all the great plugins, they are really good. So in terms of the look and feel, it's pretty lacking if you have used it too. It's not gonna be fancy. Now, Now, I did this work back in 2016, 17. So since that time and now, there's Ionic that comes up. And Ionic is built on top of Cordova, if some of you may be aware. So Ionic actually has a very slick kind of look and feel to it too. So a lot of times too, from what I know is that folks, I haven't used the Ionic, but I think some of you have in the audience that I've spoken with. So I think Ionic's actually giving you a much more better like look and feel. So if you're looking into doing this hybrid mobile app, you may want to look into Ionic and then making use of all of these Cordova plugins that it can give you. Then it will give you a much better like combination of choice of technology to use. Okay, so I also like to look into some of the alternate, actually before I go into that too, there's also another thing is like with authentication and session management, those things too, if you really want to like do hybrid approach, then you also have to worry about some of these things on a hybrid mobile app. So don't just kind of take all you have and then just run it on your phone, because if you think of let's say if there's the state of the application, it just doesn't handle too well. Like for example, like you forgot your password and that type of stuff, you want to came up with a CAPTCHA, that kind of stuff. The hybrid mobile app just doesn't handle things too well. So just be aware of that. So. Okay, so now I thought, yeah, I wanted to then talk about some of the alternative approaches. And I'm sure you know I mentioned about Ionic. There will be a good choice for hybrid. And then, of course, there's also Kotlin native too. Kotlin native is actually gives you a pretty good look and feel too, and also, I mean, as such though, it's JVM technology. And of course too, we also have React Native and comes from Facebook. And so if you're familiar too with TypeScript, I think that would be like a good choice as well. And of course too, then there's also other approach would be like progressive web apps. Maybe some of you are familiar with. I haven't worked with that yet, but Google itself has the progressive web application like support too. So you can look into that. And then from the Java side, there's a Vaadin too, if you ever look into like Java-based approach for progressive web app. But that's just an example. There are other choices too. And then there's also this there's a Java FX-based runtime too that it supports, would be like Gluon too. Gluon is also a kind of rapid mobile app development framework that you can look into. So. Okay, so I think with this, I think I'm kind of right on time, 11:50. I was told, yeah, just 30 minutes. So, but I'd like to invite you to look into IBM Cloud. We also have like a mobile foundation. And as such too, I know everybody when you hear about the word IBM is like, oh, this dinosaur company and all that. I mean, even when I joined her, I was thinking, oh, wow, that's old. But the thing is, though, I do have to say good about it, is that we're advocating a lot of open source. And that's a good thing. I mean, that's something company probably should do more kind of like advocating for that. And I'm being a developer advocate, just wanted to bring to your attention to IBM Cloud. We actually have a free sign up for over here if you're interested to this itsy link. Yeah, there actually point you to an IBM Cloud, like a free sign up. So if you sign up in there, you can make use of a lot of the functionalities, and it's free. The best thing about it is it's free. And it doesn't have some companies that says it's free for a year. No, we actually are free forever. And of course, not everything then it would be free underneath, but there are lots of choices. It's like a big Lego box, right, full of these tools that you can try out. Some things, for example, we have this thing called Cloudin. It's the equivalent of a CouchDB NoSQL database. So that too, if you want to like try it out, it may have like limited capacity for you to use, but they are there for you to try out. So if you want to build stuff, yeah, I really invite you to give it a try. There's also like say serverless. In serverless, for example, is making use of Apache OpenWhisk underneath too. So then you can deploy to the IBM Cloud. And OpenWhisk you can actually deploy to many things, Kubernetes and everything else, right? So, those are just examples of what you're all invited to try out. So if you visit that link. And then this is just my information about myself. And I invite everybody to kind of be more like sharing information. I think that's the whole point of us too coming out to talk, is to say that, well, there's no boundaries, that, you know, for the technical side of things, that there should be like, we should all be collaborating and interoperable and making all the pieces work together and build some cool apps. So, yeah, okay. So, okay, so then just one more thing to kind of point out to you too is that there's IBM also has some initiative called Call for Code, and this one is open to everybody. It's a sort of like a hackathon, but it's a multi-year initiative. So the point is that This hackathon for you to come up with ideas to, say in 2018 we had it for like, apps for natural causes, any kind of natural disaster prevention or kind of system that would help in those situations. So, and then please watch out for or watch for the 2019 initiative, which we have yet to announce it to. So, and then that's the URL to get to it. So, and yeah, so this is the end of my talk, and I think I'm a little over time, but thank you very much. Thank you.